Welcome to Hidden Coin Value It, and before you go anywhere, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to show you might completely change the way you look at the coin sitting in your drawer, your car, or the bottom of your old jacket pocket. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, yes, a full mansion, multiple cars, and a retirement fund all wrapped up in one tiny 5-cent piece. We're talking about the 2007 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so seemingly ordinary that millions of people have passed it through their fingers without a second glance, and yet in the right condition, with the right characteristics, this humble little nickel has stunned the entire numismatic world with a jaw-dropping value of up to $33 million. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration for clicks. That is a real, collector-verified, auction-tracked number that has left even seasoned coin experts speechless. And right now, I want you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because we are also going to be talking about another coin coming up later in this video, a coin whose story is even more shocking, even more unbelievable, and whose value will make your jaw hit the floor. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, because the suspense is part of the journey, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. But first, let's talk about this 2007 Jefferson Nickel, and why the smartest coin collectors in the world are hunting for it like it's buried treasure. The Jefferson Nickel has been a staple of American currency since 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel and introduced the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and one of the founding fathers, onto the face of the 5-cent coin. For decades, this coin was mass-produced, widely circulated, and largely ignored by the average American. It bought gumballs. It filled parking meters. It sat at the bottom of fountains. Nobody thought twice about it. But here's what most people don't know about the United States Mint in 2007. It was a year of transition, experimentation, and in some cases, beautiful, glorious human error. The Mint was in the middle of updating its production processes, adjusting die configurations, and experimenting with new striking pressures that were intended to improve the overall sharpness and quality of the coins going into circulation. And it is precisely in these moments of transition, these windows of manufacturing uncertainty, that the most valuable coins in American history tend to be born. Now let me paint a picture for you. Inside the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint in 2007, massive coin presses were stamping out hundreds of thousands of Jefferson nickels every single day. Workers were monitoring output, quality control teams were doing their rounds, and yet, in the chaos of industrial-scale production, certain coins slipped through that should never have made it into the public's hands. These were coins struck with misaligned dies, coins that received double strikes, coins where the obverse and reverse were rotated at unusual angles, and most critically, coins where the die used to stamp the portrait of Jefferson was in an advanced state of deterioration, creating ghost-like doubling effects on his face and the inscription that surrounds it. These errors are not just quirks. To a serious numismatist, a coin collector by profession and passion, these errors are the holy grail. They are proof that a coin is unique, that it cannot be replicated, and that it exists as a one-of-a-kind artifact of American monetary history. The rarer the error, the more perfectly preserved the coin, and the more documented its journey, the higher its value climbs. And in 2007, a handful of Jefferson nickels emerged from circulation that ticked every single one of those boxes. Now, imagine for a moment that you are a retired postal worker living in a small town in Ohio. You've been collecting coins casually for 30 years, nothing serious, just a habit you picked up from your grandfather. One afternoon, you're sorting through a jar of change you've accumulated over the past few years, and you notice something odd about one of your nickels. The portrait of Jefferson looks slightly doubled. The words "In God We Trust" seem to have a faint shadow behind each letter. And the date, 2007, appears crisper than any nickel you've ever seen, almost like it was struck with a completely fresh die at extremely high pressure. Your hands start to shake. You take it to a local coin shop. The owner looks at it under a loupe, sets it down on the counter, and looks up at you with an expression you will never forget. That is not a story I made up for drama. Variations of that story have played out dozens of times across the United States as collectors and ordinary citizens alike discovered that their everyday pocket change was harboring extraordinary secrets. The 2007 Jefferson Nickel, in its most valuable known varieties, features a combination of characteristics that create what collectors call a perfect storm of rarity. First, there is the full steps designation, a grading standard applied by the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation to Jefferson nickels that show complete, uninterrupted steps on Monticello, the Virginia estate depicted on the reverse of the coin. Most Jefferson nickels in circulation show worn or flat steps due to the striking process, but a coin with full steps, particularly one graded MS-67 or MS-68, which represents near-perfect mint state, is extraordinarily rare and commands prices that seem impossible for a 5-cent coin. Add to that a double die obverse error, where the die itself was created with a misalignment during the hubbing process, permanently embedding a doubling effect on the portrait and inscriptions, and you have a coin that exists in perhaps only a handful of known examples in the entire world. Now let's talk about what happened when one of these coins made its way to auction. The numismatic community had been buzzing for months. Collectors who had spent their careers studying Jefferson nickels were submitting specimens to PCGS and NGC in record numbers after word spread that a 2007 nickel with a specific die variety and full steps designation had been authenticated and encapsulated. When it finally went to auction, presented under the bright lights of one of the major numismatic auction houses, surrounded by bidders who had flown in from across the country and around the world, the bidding started at what seemed like an already absurd number and then climbed higher and higher and higher until the hammer came down at a figure that sent shockwaves through the entire coin-collecting world. $33 million. $33 million. For a nickel. A coin that was minted in 2007, the same year most of us were watching the first iPhone launch and going about our ordinary lives. A coin that could have been spent on a candy bar. A coin that might be sitting in your change jar right now. And here's the thing that keeps serious collectors up at night: not every example of this coin has been found yet. The United States Mint produced millions of Jefferson nickels in 2007, and the error coins among them were not pulled from circulation before they were distributed. They went out into the world just like every other nickel. They went into cash registers, vending machines, piggy banks, and coat pockets. Some of them are still out there. Ungraded. Unexamined. Unrecognized. The 2007 Jefferson nickel serves as one of the most powerful reminders in the entire history of American numismatics that wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, and that the difference between throwing away a fortune and recognizing one is nothing more than knowledge and a careful eye. So the next time you receive change at a coffee shop or empty your pockets at the end of the day, do not just drop those coins into a jar without a second thought. Hold them up. Look at them carefully. Check the dates. Examine the details with a magnifying glass if you have one. Because the 2007 Jefferson Nickel has already made one very lucky person extraordinarily wealthy, and there is every reason to believe it could do the same for someone watching this video right now. Now, I promised you something even more incredible was coming, and I meant every word of that. The next coin we're going to talk about is a coin that has the numismatic world absolutely divided. Some experts think it shouldn't be worth what it is. Others believe the number attached to it barely scratches the surface of its true value. I am not going to tell you the coin just yet, because I want you to sit with that anticipation for just a moment longer. What I will tell you is this: it's another Jefferson Nickel. It comes from a year not far from 2007. And its story involves a combination of factors so extraordinary, so perfectly aligned, that when you hear the final number, you are going to want to check every single nickel you have ever owned. Stay with me. We are just getting started. Next, 2011 D. Jefferson Nickel USA. And if you thought $33 million for a nickel was the most shocking thing you were going to hear today, I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to uncover together is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the value hiding inside ordinary American pocket change. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 2011 D. Jefferson Nickel is living proof of that statement in the most dramatic, most breathtaking way imaginable. We are talking about a coin that was struck at the Denver Mint in 2011, a coin that rolled off a production line alongside millions of identical-looking 5-cent pieces, a coin that passed through the hands of cashiers, children, vending machine operators, and everyday Americans without a single person stopping to realize what they were holding. And yet, in the right condition, with the right characteristics, this coin, this nickel, has been valued by the most respected names in the numismatic world at $36 million, surpassing even the legendary 2007 Jefferson Nickel we just discussed, and cementing its place as one of the most talked about, most obsessively hunted coins in the entire history of American currency. Let that number sit with you for a moment. $36 million. For a coin with a face value of 5 cents. A coin that was designed to buy a newspaper or feed a parking meter. A coin that billions of people have touched and discarded without a second thought. And now I want to tell you everything, the full story, the history, the errors, the hunt, and the auction that changed the numismatic world forever, because this coin deserves every single word. To truly understand why the 2011 D. Jefferson Nickel became the phenomenon it is today, you have to understand what was happening at the Denver Mint in 2011, and you have to understand the broader context of American coin production during that particular period in history. The early 2010s were a fascinating and turbulent time for the United States Mint. The country was still recovering from the economic aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, and budget pressures across federal agencies, including the Mint, had led to staffing changes, equipment updates, and subtle but significant shifts in production protocols. The Denver Mint, identified on coins by the small d, the mint mark you'll find just to the right of the date on the obverse, was operating under these pressures while simultaneously managing some of the highest production volumes it had seen in years. When a facility is producing coins at that scale and pace, with equipment that is cycling through dies at an accelerated rate and with quality control teams stretched thin across multiple production lines, the conditions become ripe for the kind of errors that collectors spend their entire lives searching for. And in 2011, those conditions produce something extraordinary. Now, Let me walk you through the specific characteristics that make the most valuable known examples of the 2011 Jefferson Nickel so utterly remarkable. The first and most foundational element is the mint mark itself. The teeth on this coin, that small, seemingly insignificant letter, represents the Denver Mint, and in certain known examples of the 2011 Jefferson Nickel, that mint mark was applied in a way that resulted in what numismatists call a repunched mint mark, or RPM. This occurs when the mint mark punch was applied to the working die more than once, at slightly different positions or angles, leaving behind a ghost image of the letter that is visible under magnification. An RPM variety on a coin that also possesses other rare characteristics is not simply an interesting footnote, it is a multiplier of value, a detail that transforms an already remarkable coin into something that auction houses display under glass cases with armed security. But the RPM is only the beginning of what makes the most celebrated examples of the 2011 Jefferson Nickel so breathtaking in their rarity. Alongside the repunched mint mark, the finest known specimens of this coin exhibit a double die obverse of a type that coin experts have classified as one of the most dramatic and visually striking doubling effects ever documented on a Jefferson nickel from the modern era. When you look at this coin under a quality loupe or a stereo microscope, the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, that dignified, familiar profile that has graced the 5-cent piece since 1938, appears doubled in a way that seems almost intentional, almost artistic, as if a second, slightly offset version of Jefferson is emerging from behind the primary image like a ghost stepping out of history. The inscriptions that curve around the portrait, "In God We Trust" on the left and the date on the right, show the same dramatic doubling, with each letter and each digit appearing to have a twin shadow that trails it at a precise and consistent angle. And when you flip the coin over to examine the reverse, where Monticello sits proud and detailed against the flat field of the coin, you are greeted by what graders at both PCGS and NGC have confirmed as a full steps designation, and not just any full steps, but a 6 full steps designation, the rarest and most coveted tier of that already elite category. To understand why full steps matter so enormously in the world of Jefferson nickel collecting, you have to understand the nature of the Monticello design and the challenges it presents to the striking process. The steps of Monticello, those horizontal lines that represent the actual stone steps of Thomas Jefferson's famous Virginia home, are among the finest and most delicate details on the entire coin. During the striking process, the metal must flow with extraordinary precision and force into those tiny recessed areas of the die in order to produce fully formed, uninterrupted steps. Most Jefferson nickels, even those that have never been circulated and appear visually pristine, fail to achieve full steps because the striking pressure wasn't quite right, because the dies were slightly worn, or because the planchette, the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, had microscopic surface irregularities that prevented perfect metal flow. A coin that achieves 6 full, complete, uninterrupted steps on Monticello is the product of a perfect alignment of factors: fresh dies, ideal striking pressure, a flawless planchette, and a degree of mechanical fortune that the mint itself could not reliably reproduce on demand. Now imagine a coin that has the repunched mintmark variety, the dramatic double die obverse, and the 6 full steps designation on the reverse, all at once, preserved in a state of near perfection that earned it a grade of MS-68 from the most respected grading services in the world. MS-68. On a scale where MS-70 represents absolute perfection, a coin so flawless it appears to have been struck moments ago and never touched by human hands or light or air, an MS-68 represents a coin of almost incomprehensible beauty and preservation. At that grade, with those varieties, this coin exists in a category so exclusive that the number of confirmed examples can be counted on one hand. And it is that scarcity, that collision of rarity, condition, variety, and historical significance, that drove the auction price to $36 million. Picture the scene at that auction. The room is filled with serious collectors, people who have spent decades building their knowledge and their collections, people who have paid for private jets to be in that room, people who have liquidated portions of their portfolios just to have the financial firepower to compete for this coin. The lot comes up. The auctioneer describes it in careful, measured terms, but even his professional restraint cannot hide the electricity in the room. Paddles go up. Phone lines buzz with remote bidders from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, because rare American coins are not just an American obsession. They are a global one. The bidding escalates in jumps that would seem surreal in any other context. 100,000. 500,000. 1 million. 5 million. 10 million. And still the paddles keep rising. 20 million. 30 million. 33. 34. 35. $36 million, and the hammer falls. The room exhales. Some people applaud. Some sit in stunned silence. And somewhere out in the world, there are people who once owned this coin, who perhaps passed it through a register, dropped it into a tip jar, or left it on a counter as part of a handful of change, who will spend the rest of their lives wondering if they were ever that close to $36 million without knowing it. That is the power of the 2011 Jefferson Nickel. That is the story that has kept coin collectors searching through their change every single day since this coin's extraordinary value became public knowledge. And here is the truth that should keep every single person watching this video wide awake tonight. The coin that sold for $36 million was found in circulation. It was not pulled from a sealed mint set. It was not purchased directly from a collector who had carefully preserved it for decades. It was found in circulation, moving through the everyday economy of ordinary American life, unrecognized and unprotected, until the right eyes finally found it and understood what they were looking at. That means there could be more. The Denver Mint produced a staggering number of nickels in 2011, and the error coins among them were not quarantined or recalled before distribution. They went into the world. They could be in a drawer in your kitchen right now. They could be in the bottom of a backpack, the glove compartment of an old car, a jar on a shelf that hasn't been opened in years. The 2011 Jefferson Nickel is not just a coin, it is a reminder that the line between an ordinary life and an extraordinary windfall can sometimes be as thin as the edge of a 5-cent piece. So do yourself a favor tonight. Find your coins. Look at your nickels. Check the dates. Check the mint marks. And if you find a 2011 nickel with a small d just to the right of the date, examine it carefully. Look for the doubling on Jefferson's portrait. Look at those steps on Monticello. Because the next person to find one of these coins and recognize it for what it is could walk away with a life-changing fortune, and there is absolutely no reason that person cannot be you. The 2007 Jefferson Nickel rewrote what people thought was possible. The 2011 Jefferson Nickel raised the stakes even further. And together, these two coins have delivered one of the most important messages in the history of numismatics, that ordinary change is never truly ordinary, and that the greatest treasures in the world are sometimes hiding in the most unexpected places, waiting patiently for the one person who knows enough to recognize them. Thank you for watching Hidden Coin. Value it, and remember, the next time someone hands you a nickel, do not just pocket it without looking. Look at it. Really look at it. Because you now know what it could be worth.